Welcome back to Discourse, the weekly occult and esoteric podcast hosted by Abammon the Great and Dr. Anna Stone. This week, we are honored to be joined by Nicole and Rufus Opus as we delve into the great work and practice, sharing our personal experiences and reflections on navigating its transformative steps. Breathe in, young magus, and let the work begin. The year is 1953. Beneath the cool morning sky of a remote Spanish train station, Eugene Cancelet waits. His faded gray tweed suit does little to guard him against the chill, yet his trembling hands find no solace in his pockets. Instead, they clutch a letter written in French, but in a peculiar, unmistakable style. The deliberate errors, strange capitalizations, and archaic syntax reveal its true nature, a cipher. Only someone taught in the ways of an adept could unravel its secrets. For Eugene, this letter is more than a summons. It is a lifeline to his master, the one who first unveiled the mysteries of the great work to him decades ago. Since 1937, his master had vanished, retreating into seclusion as the world burned in war and rebuilt in its ashes. Now, 16 years later, Eugene has been called to meet him again. As the letter promised, a black car pulls up to the station. Its passenger door swings open, and Eugene steps inside without hesitation. The drive winds through dense woods and up mountain roads that narrow with every turn. Eugene's thoughts drift. His master, how old must he be now? 80? 100? Perhaps older? Time had always been a strange companion to his master, who seemed to live in defiance of it. Eugene shakes the thought away. It is better not to dwell on such mysteries. The work of alchemists often bends the natural order, but only fools rush toward answers unprepared. The car finally halts before an ancient castle, its hulking form rising out of the mist like a tombstone. Eugene steps out, his shoes crunching on broken stone. Before him loom heavy wooden doors with rusted hinges, slightly ajar as if they had been forced open. Inside, the air is cold, and the crumbling interior suggests the building has long been abandoned. He calls out into the void, his voice echoing back to him unanswered. Then, from above, a sound, a door creaking open. Eugene follows the noise to a spiral staircase that ascends into shadows. Clutching the letter tightly, he climbs the stairs, his breathing shallow with anticipation. At the top, a hallway glows faintly with firelight. He advances down its length, stopping just before the open door at its end. From within comes the soft crackle of a fire and the faintest hint of sulfur.
Master?
Eugene calls.
When black crows give birth to white doves.
A voice answers, its tone both familiar and deeply unsettling, as though two voices spoke in unison.
Then you will be wise. Come in, Eugene.
Heart pounding, Eugene steps into the room. A modest laboratory lies before him, dominated by an open hearth whose flames dance with unnatural vigor. At its center stands a figure. As Eugene approaches, the figure turns and his breath catches in his throat. It is his master, but impossibly transformed. The face he knows so well now carries the unmistakable features of another, his master's wife, who had long since passed. It is not merely a blend of man and woman, but something wholly other, something transcendent.
Master, how?
Eugene stammers, his mind reeling. The figure smiles, its face serene, yet enigmatic.
I am happy to see you again, Eugene.
We must continue the work.
So welcome back to a special episode of Discourse. We are joined by two guests this week. It is Rufus Opus and Nicole. They are two occultists that have made their rounds across the internet. And obviously, we are joined with Dr. Anna Stone. This week, we're going to be exploring the great work. It is something that you can hear Rufus talking about on his own YouTube channel, where he streams regularly and talks a lot about Illuminism and the great work. And I guess we're just going to go forward with our experiences with the great work. I come from more of an alchemical perspective. However, your book, Seven Spheres, I'm going to be honest, when I picked that book up and was reading it, I was kind of checking out the competition because I am personally working on spherical initiation system through the Chaldean spheres to help perform the great work. So I think this is something that we can all kind of connect on right here, because the great work itself is a very personal thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and just so you know, I'll never see you as I don't think we're competing at all. I think the competition is to see, how much light we can get out there, and illuminate as much darkness as we can. And at the end of it, we can compare notes and see what we do better next time. Right. So it's just,
he's his own worst critic. Definitely.
Right on.
Yeah. So welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for coming and being on our show. I'm really excited to have both of you here. And I've read your book also, Rufus, and I love it. I love how easy it is to follow along, and it makes sense. And it's not just so, it's not easy, but like for somebody that does know what's going on, I guess, it's not like the other unattainable ones where it doesn't make any sense. And I think even when I was doing research for this, you came up as listed. I don't know if you're aware of this, but just here's a little ego boost for you. When I was researching about the work of drawing spirits into crystals, specifically that topic, you are listed as the foremost expert of how to do it. I don't know if you're aware of that, but you are. So
yeah. Okay. So when do you remember the Yahoo groups back in the early 2000s?
Yeah.
Right. So they called Yahoo groups. I was in Aaron Leach's Solomonic Yahoo group, and he and Jake Stratton Kent and this guy named Zadkiel at the time, they were all like the big names, right? And they were like talking about this stuff that was so deep and historical and all the different grimoires and they're looking for the root grimoire, the grimoire of Goetia. And I'm like sitting there like I can't keep up. So I was like, I go into Esoteric archives and I saw this thing called Trithemius. I looked at it and I'm like, this looks pretty easy. This is more my speed. I can handle it. But it was so much easier than everything else. And I was like, hey guys, what about this? This is a lot easier to do, isn't it? And they were like, yeah, okay.
Oh.
But yeah, that's how I became the foremost expert, is because nobody was paying attention to it because it was too easy for them. They want the big hard things. I was like, we could just do the little easy things and just conjure angels.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Everybody tries to make things very complicated, and sometimes it's not as complicated as it, they make it like in reality. So,
well, I think that's what really separates, I guess, magic from a magical worldview from a scientific worldview, is where a scientific worldview is kind of reductive and a magical worldview is more expansive, right?
Yeah, definitely. I deal with that. Yeah, I was a research scientist for 20 years for the government, and it was definitely a jump to go full on into magic. It's still hard sometimes to leave that behind, but so you have the great work for you guys. Like, what does it mean? Because I come from my background will be psychology lens, because that's what I have my doctorate in, but also a magic one as well. And I'm trying to find the synthesis between the two, like what that looks like. So I'm curious to see, or to hear rather, what you guys, how you guys describe it, and how you think the best way to achieve it would be.
That's good.
Well, I think it's a combination of healing and transformation,
right?
Too, right?
Yeah.
So, like, Rufus's book may be very simple and easy to follow, but it's the healing, especially if you have trauma that's prohibiting you from accomplishing your heart's desires, right?
Right. Absolutely.
I think that's more what it's about for me.
Right. Yeah.
Process.
I can relate to that, definitely. And I think, yeah, it definitely is. I think that's the one thing people don't want to do. That's the one part of it that they don't want to deal with. They just want all the fun stuff. They don't want to deal with the actual, like the root of it, right? Which is about understanding yourself and healing the parts of you that are fractured, right?
Well, when you look at the great work in history, like it's basically that, right? I mean, it's like the 16th century alchemical texts they are what they are, right? They're chemical, they're spiritual, they're kind of hard to understand because, like you said, they're written in cipher manuscripts and all this stuff. I love the intro, by the way. That was great.
Thank you.
But yeah, like it's hard to kind of to wrap your head around it. But when you look at like the things that they were trying to balance and heal, it's very psychological. It's very much like 16th century psychology. So like if you're coming from a psychological background, you can see that they're trying to solve the same problems that we're trying to solve with psychiatry, depression, anxiety, self-worth, social value, social interactions, getting favor of people that you want to have favor of and all that stuff. And
even having the courage to speak online to everybody. I have no idea how much healing it takes.
Was it hard for you to do that?
It's hard. Yeah. This is my second podcast. And I mean, the sound healing has helped tremendously as well as Rufus's books, especially with the Mercury initiation.
I just did that. Yeah, I just did that one. Yes, definitely. So yeah, so the first one that you did was the one last week on his podcast. Yeah. That was your first time. I would never have known that.
Yeah, that was my first. And I mean, I was really nervous at first, but I mean, like I had my familiar right next to me and I was like, Can you just help me calm down? And I was just like focused on my breath and I was like, okay, I got this. And I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah. You did great too. Yeah. I forget that she's not been doing this forever because I mean, like we got married, like 3 years ago now? 3 years ago we got married. We got been together for 4 years, right?
Yeah.
All right. Just making sure I got the time right. Some of us are not as good at remembering as other people.
We'll be 4 years in February.
I think that's a guy thing, definitely. So don't worry about it.
Right. So we'd known each other for like 10 years before that. And just like, but we got together 4 years ago. We both were single at the same time and perfect.
Stars aligned.
And like, it was like everything and literally stars aligned. Right. So like everything gets, I don't know, it's cohesive and, you get it's definitely next level stuff. And so I forget that she's not been online and doing all this stuff because she's a powerhouse, right? You know what I mean? Like she's got all this information and experience and wisdom and stuff. So
absolutely. And when I was watching it, I thought that you've been on there many times and I just missed it. And then in the chat, like I was watching the live feed, and everyone was like, "I want to hear more from Nicole. Like, talk more about this." So, like that's really good. Your presence is definitely very strong and in a good way. But I think I know what you mean. Like with the stars aligning, it's like if you're trying to heal, if you're trying to do this stuff, you can't be in a toxic situation with somebody toxic. It's not possible, right? You have to have somebody else that like understands and like can help facilitate certain healings in you that you couldn't get elsewhere, right? And a lot of psychology nowadays will say like you can't do that if you're not healed. You can't be in like fully healed. That's not even a thing. There's nobody fully healed, right? So I mean, I feel that definitely like with that I think that's very sweet that you guys are able to do that for each other and have this in common also is very important. I think a spiritual aspect of a relationship is very important, right? Like, I mean, if you guys weren't on the same page, it wouldn't be the same kind of result, right?
Well, and we feed off of each other too, right? Like it's synergistic. It's
that's actually really funny because like I was 16 when I got the call, and I broke up with my boyfriend because I realized he was boring.
Fire sign. You are definitely.
I'm curious though. So I guess in my alchemical explorations, I run into a lot of trying. There's a kind of discernment that you have to take. What about the alchemy is talking about something maybe literal and something that's maybe symbolic or psychological. And so I guess from the reading the excerpt, one of the myths of Fulcanelli is that his wife was his initiator, and that they came together in the divine androgen. Do you think that maybe the magical couple is a part of the great work?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think like both like externally, but also within yourself, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, you have to come together as like you have to get in touch, I think, with the anima and the whole the feminine side of your psyche and the masculine, like feminine and masculine, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So many of our words are charged these days. It's hard to know.
It's just go for it. It's an ancient tradition. Just use it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, but like balancing out that feminine and masculine, I think, is what the alchemical, like the two-headed, the red. When you merge the king and the queen, and they've got the two faces, like you were describing in the intro, that blend of that masculine and feminine, in my opinion, that holy hermaphrodite, it represents the ability to generate, create your life, right? Create all your experiences. It's like you have everything to be both male and female and produce your own child, and your magical child is something that you're producing. And it's just, you've got all your creative forces in tune, and you're focusing on it. But I think that there really is a physical counterpart to all this, a complement to it. Because like in like the Golden Dawn traditions, and like there's this Italian tradition, but basically you build a body of light, and they use sex magic with your partner to accomplish this. Like while you're doing the sex magic with your partner, you're focusing the energy into your body of light, and it's supposed to be something that the magician goes into when they die, right? So like all your life, you're building up this egregore that you are going to transfer your consciousness into when you go. So, I mean, there's lots of ways to look at that particular thing, whether is it like, I mean, everything that I have that's going great right now, I mean, it started when we got together, right? Like in terms of, no, I mean, like seriously, like I mean, it's.
No, I feel that. Like, I understand that. I understand what you're saying.
But no, I mean, but seriously, it's just like everything came together. And when we got together, it was like everything started going in the right direction and falling into place and all that stuff. So I think there is something to the whole soulmates thing. And I mean, when I was 11, I had a dream about, I had a dream when I was like 11 we were out this group of I don't know what it was, like adventurers that were going through time, right? And one of the people got shot in this adventure that we were on, and they were like, "We'll catch up with you next time," right? And it was, when we got together, there were reasons to think that that might be Nicole, right? So it's like, there's just a lot of overlapping sort of symbols. So it's
I have a mark on my hip.
Yeah, right where the person got shot in my dream.
Oh,
so I was
wow.
like,
Oh, wow.
right? Yeah, it's like foreshadowing, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's a little strange.
And the first time we saw each other, she was walking behind somebody who I was on a webcam with, and she was just walking by in the background, and we looked over, and just somehow we clicked through the camera, right? And I was like, "Hi," and then she's like, "Hi," and was just walking through this scene, and then like we both knew, like later on, 10 years later, we started talking about it, we both knew that there was something to all that, So I do believe that there's a physical side of your soulmate kind of thing, and I'm not going to get into whether or not it's male or female, or if, like, I think gay people have gay soul partners. I think that there's no reason that your counterpart has to be physically of the opposite gender, but. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many different. I don't want to try to say what is and what isn't possible for other people, but I know that for me, this is going great.
Anything is possible.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think because if you're trying to balance everything internally, right? I mean, what is in society, everybody, like that's kind of what we do is we couple up. That's like humans are genetically wired for that, right? So it would make sense that you would, if you're doing the internal, that it externally has to be reflective of what you're doing on the inside as well, right? I don't see why that would be so far-fetched, like at all. But like I think that the way people put in their stock into this like twin flame shit is like outrageous. I mean, I did a whole episode on my other podcast about it, and I went off and like got so many enemies about it. Like I don't care, because I was like, "This is, you're making money off people and telling them like lies." You know what I mean? Like, oh, we'll find your soulmate or your twin flame for you. And it's just like, are you joking? Like that's terrible. But yes, besides that, I do believe that there's, but I don't think it's forced like in that situation where they're forcing people to do that, I'm talking about that cult. Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense to me. And in the psychological perspective of it too, is that balance, is necessary. And also just, the narrative, like I said earlier, you can't be in a relationship where you're fully healed. Well, that's a lie. Like that's what we are all told, and we hear that so much. But actually, when I got into my PhD work, I was told the opposite. They were like, no, if you have trauma from a relationship of any kind, like if your parents were bad or, anybody that's supposed to care about you and love you, and they didn't do that for you, the only way you can transmute that and to heal from that is to find a relationship that does the opposite for you, like to actually help you and to get, so that you can get trust back again and feel secure and loved and all that stuff. And so I'm like, why don't we say that to people then? And they're like, well, because they want us divided, like that's the whole thing is that, when we're divided, we're easier to control, whatever. And that's what my professor told me. And I was just like, that sounds like something I would have came up with on my own. Like I'm super conspiracy like that about the division stuff. But, so that's absolutely a fact. Like that's true. Like people need that reassurance, right? So if you're getting that from somebody that's healthy for you, that's great. So I'm glad you guys found each other that way. And that dream, I think that's amazing. Like that's.
Yeah, I take it with grains of salt for sure, but I mean,
but it's cute.
It might be coincidence.
Yeah, but there's a lot of them.
There are no coincidences, right? Like that's what they say.
Meaningful coincidence.
Right, yeah.
That's what we systematize doing what we do.
Yeah, and that's a rational brain kicking in, saying no, right?
Trying to filter it.
Yeah.
Trying to shut it down. Yeah. It's like you're getting too powerful. Here's some like rationality.
Yeah, it happens. Right? So how long did it take you to how long did it take you to write your book? Like, could you mind if I ask that? Like, how long were you working on it? I'm asking for a friend.
Not as long as about as long as it looks. I still get shit about that from my friends. My fellow published authors say that I wrote an outline and then published it. It took me about, I want to say like 3 months to do most of the bulk of the writing. And that was because so if you look at the seven spheres, each of the planets starts with an introduction. That was the bulk of what I wrote. The rest of it is like tech writing. It's like these are your requirements. This is your script. These are your physical ingredients. This is how you put it together. This is your blocking. This is your words you say. This is it's technical stuff, right? But the actual writing part was only the intros, right? The description of the planetary powers and what they do. And it's not like each one of those is basically about the equivalent of a blog post. So if you think of it, or like I was in AP English in high school. So like we had to do these essays, like they drilled us on essays for like all of my 10th grade year. That's all we did. So like, but basically the intros to the chapters are all essays, and they're all pretty short. They're like 1,500, 2,000 words. They're relatively simple. I just ground them out one at a time.
Yeah. So. How long, I mean, like for publishing though, were you nervous to do that? To put it out there?
Not really.
Right.
I mean, okay, so by the time I got published, people already hated me. So I mean, I've always been like I've got some issues, and they come through. I've been unmedicated for most of my occult career, and I probably should have been. Well, I definitely should have been. So Yeah, so I've caused drama and stress for a lot of people, and by the time I got published, I had pretty thick skin. I wasn't too worried about what people thought anymore. So
Yeah, right on. That's cool. Yeah.
So I guess in the performance of the great work, I mean, it's something that we're constantly going through. You know, you're never finished with it. However, we have a lot of systems within the occult that we like to use as kind of check marks, right? So one of the things that I've spent a lot of time the past 6 years is trying to escape the trappings of 19th century occultism. And I found myself, I'm trying to get away from this Hermetic Kabbalah and the check marks like crossing the abyss and the knowledge and conversation. And I'm trying to get into some more ancient stuff. And I find myself, I slip right back into the Chaldean spheres and well, I got to hit these 7 planets in order to perform the great work. And so I guess how do you check your progress on the great work? Because one of the things that I constantly run into an issue is as I initiate into a sphere and enough time goes by, then everything starts to kind of feel mundane again, you know. It's like, did I actually do anything? Or
I see what you're saying.
yeah,
so, like, you know, how do you know that you're still going forward
when
life feels normal? I'm gonna speak to that, or do you? I
You can go ahead.
Okay, so I don't think we ever finish it, right? It's not like you ever get initiated into Venus and then you're the power of Venus on Earth. You know, you're always going to have a separation from some of it. All right, so do you believe in the unity, like the Godhead, that all is one?
Yeah, I'd say I lean heavily into Neoplatonism, so yeah, it's a framework that I understand a lot of things through. But I mean, I'm a heavy Abrahamist as well, so you know.
Do you believe in the creator God separate from?
Not separate. No, I'm not a monotheist. Yeah, more of a panentheist. God is present within. I am God. Everything is God, like that kind of thing. So
I like the word emergent too, but I think panentheist is pretty close to where I'm at too. I that's the closest word I found to what I think. But okay, so all right. So from that cosmos, understanding that we're all part of God and God is part of us, right? I was watching this a reel earlier about how the unity, the guy points out that if you take out all one, if you take one of the L's out, it's just alone. And that's what the unity is all alone. And that's why we did all this. That's why we have a universe and why we individuated as ourselves. And the we can't get back to the unity, because if we did, we'd be like, fuck. I mean, that's not what we meant to do. And it's like, so like the idea that we have of the great work being a reunification with the divine, where we become one with it, is false, right? I think that's a non-starter. It's a non-starter, right? So you can't even get out of the gate with that. But if you realize your great work is just to understand that we're part of the unity and function as part of this thing we're doing. Right. And if you said you're an Abrahamist, right? So we're made in God's image, right? And God's image is creator speaking things into being, God, right? That's the image that we're in. So it's like, that's our role, and the whole reunion with the one thing is just recognizing that it's all one thing. And we've done this on purpose, and we're doing this for ourselves, because the alternative is worse, And it's like when you see that all of this is just kind of an infinitely immortal lunatic's fantasy to escape their monotony, and if you realize you're a part of that, it changes everything, and so the great work isn't something that you're going to accomplish. It's going to be something that you work on for fun, because it's helping you understand and experience as an individual, like this condensate of consciousness that's able to interact as an entity for a brief moment before it merges back into this boring eternity, but it has those memories, right? So it's like, I don't know, it makes it more, for me, it made it more Like I don't think that I can finish it. So so getting back to the main question, like how do you know what your progress is?
Mhm.
I think the only benchmark that we can have that's really useful is success, right? You know, like does what I say is going to happen happen? You know, going back to the Old Testament prophets, you know, how do I know if it's a real prophet of God? The test of the prophets was if the prophet of God says this is going to happen in the name of God and it doesn't happen, stone them at the gates. You know? It's bullshit, and you do not have to listen to it.
Yeah, that's great.
You know?
Yeah, that's what you were saying. Yeah, he was just saying that the other day. We were saying that how do you know somebody's, like that they've done the work?
Oh, yeah.
Their
So the
success.
fruits. Yeah, exactly. You look at the fruits.
Right.
That's largely how I judge my contemporaries, I guess.
Well,
It's also why I'm mostly independent now. I fell out of working with orders because of that.
Yeah.
we're both former OTO.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, you're both former OTO? Right on. I just joined a few, but they're very inactive, like OES.
I had some bad experiences. I ran with a pretty
Crazy.
rough crowd. I guess I was never a left-hand path practitioner, but I was in their orders, I guess, for whatever reason. And those guys are
people.
we got infested with O9A and neo-Nazis and bad people. Yeah, bad people. Like, put a bad taste in my mouth. So
and I'm an OES Eastern Star, and it's just all, I hate to say it, but it's all funerals and potlucks. Like I there's nothing else happening there. It's just like, what?
Is that the Masonic sisterhood?
Yeah. And it's just, every time I get an email, it's either your dues or you need to pay your dues, or it's someone died. Like, it's just like, that's it. It's so, I haven't learned anything there. But yeah, like the orders are different. It is a little different. I've always been solo practitioner until like OES was 2015 is when I was initiated there, but that was just from a familiar. My grandfather was a master mason, so I did it for that. And it wasn't to get magical knowledge. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. But I've been solitary. And I think the way that we can judge things, I know what you mean by the mundane. It gets like we do a thing and then we have results and we're like excited about it. And then it just it drops off, right? Because life kicks back in and like we're doing the normal stuff. And you can feel even a little detached from it and like, did it really happen? And that's one of the things I think I struggle with a lot is I'll have like results that are very obvious and like, and my friend, people will even notice. But then like after a few months or something, it's like, did that really happen the way I think it did? Like, I question it. Like it's faded. So it's not as vibrant in my memory anymore. So then you have to, I guess, just go again. Right?
So I think with me personally, the lunar and Saturnian spheres, those are the ones that like I don't forget that, because what I received through those spheres, it's like it doesn't stop. Like life is different now. Right. Like I can perceive things that I wasn't able to perceive before. But with the more like worldly, I guess I like Venus, Mars. Right now I'm in the middle of Jupiter. Those ones are very I feel like I'm like, it's like, did I really get anything done here? Or, those ones are like a back and forth. But I think Jupiter is probably the second longest one I've done. I've been working with Jupiter for a while now. And I feel like I keep getting put through the ringer and then pulled, back and that kind of thing. So
I wonder what have you guys experienced with that? If you can talk about it with Jupiter.
My initiation was fantastic.
Sad.
Maybe it's because it's my ruling planet, but I just remember being like bathed in this energy, and I could feel it off of my skin, and it was like electricity, and it was very, very nice. I felt like a queen.
What sign is your Jupiter in?
Huh?
What is your Jupiter in? Mercury.
Mercury,
yeah. Her Jupiter's in Mercury. So, yeah, it came through that. For me, my Jupiter's in Pisces, so I had a great time. It's Pisces is like the best place to have a Jupiter, apparently. So it hasn't been bad for me. But I had really terrible experiences with Mars, and the Sun has not been very fun for me. I mean, it is in its own way, but I think that if you take a look at your natal chart, it gives you a pretty good idea of what your struggles are going to be, in my opinion, and it also can give you some advice. If you look at your challenges in your chart as things to make offerings to, and if you're like you said that Jupiter's putting you through the ringer,
I've had to assume, I approached Jupiter like, oh, this is going to be, after going through Luna and Saturn and Mars, I was like, oh, finally you get a break. And Jupiter's made me assume a lot more authority than I had, and then I wanted. I wanted the things, but now I have to do the things that.
That's.
Yeah. So you get to learn what it's like to be a king.
Yes, exactly, and it's very difficult. It's
I don't talk about that in the book. I never mentioned that part in the book. I've specifically avoided that part in the book for reasons.
Yeah,
that's a great way to put it, Nicole. Like it is. I think the way she just said is very helpful because it is. It's like you asked for the stuff, but now you have the authority. You have the authority and the position.
Oh, you have to assume the authority. And that's something that the occult has taught me is that authority is assumed,
you have to take it.
Yeah, you have to assume it yourself. And so, your worldly brain may approach something and say like, yeah, I want the authority and I want the power. But then when it gets into like actually assuming it, then all of a sudden,
reality
there's a lot more you're dealing with. It's been kind of maddening, but
hey, that's she's right there. Like that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what's happened. Like that's what I've seen. So thanks. That helps, Nicole. Like that puts it into frame a lot better. Actually.
I was all excited for Jupiter. I was like, yeah, let's get some money and promotions, dude.
Yeah.
No.
You got it. You got it.
I've been taking my time with him. He's been putting me through the ringer.
Yeah.
Well, the higher up the food chain you get, the less actual physical labor you have to do. It's just
you become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That comes with its own challenges too, though. Like because I know for me, when I got to my, where I am now, I'm working I work very little for the same money, and I'm 18 hours a week. That's it. And I'm working the same as I was working 60 hours, teaching high school. Now I'm 18 hours a week teaching college. And I felt really weird. It was very uncomfortable at first because it's like, I feel like I'm cheating, like it felt very strange to me. And then I got a lot of stuff from it too. Like some of my people I know were like, oh, whatever, you don't even work, like super bitter about it. And I was like, I worked really hard to get here, you guys, and then that's the effort. And that was my sacrifice, right? You sacrifice things to get to where you want to be. And you can't feel shame about it. So you got to live in that Jupiter, because Jupiter, I don't feel like that's going to be somebody that energy is not one to be it's to be commanding more,
Yeah. So I think it was interesting though, because when I started my work with the sphere of Jupiter, and I honestly have never worked with Jupiter in my occult career. I've always Venus a lot in my early occult career, and a lot of lunar stuff. A lot of the feminine energies, very avoidant of the masculine ones for some reason. So this past year that I've been working with Jupiter has been my first time, and everybody, talks, oh, he's great, and that kind of thing.
But you are doing great.
No, it is good. It is a lot though. It is a lot.
We are taking a quick break from the Discourse podcast. Be sure to check out our guest's website at rufusopus.com, his YouTube channel in the description, and his book, 7 Spheres, in order to connect with Rufus Opus and Nicole for more exploration into their occult insights. And now we return to Discourse.
I think Nicole does more research lately than I do. She's been studying she's been studying a lot of sound healing, actually.
Right. Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, I don't know anything about sound healing, honestly.
So it's a complementary. It's considered a complementary healing modality. So basically, it helps the process of healing through sound. So the sound goes like through the body and affects the cells on a cellular level. And yeah, it's been proven to be really effective. I'm studying I read this book and The Power of Sound, and it goes into like some of the case studies of what sound can do for people, and they found it to be incredibly effective with as a complementary therapy with people that have cancer. Yeah, and I don't know. There's just so much about it. Like I could go into it. Like I could really talk about it forever. But it's also alchemical. It's an alchemical process. So I mean, it ties in a little bit to about the great work, and it follows a similar process with the powers of the spheres to bring about healing and transformation for people.
Yeah. So she's I want the sound healing thing. It like so. I don't know. Speaking of the great work, right? The way that the sound healing thing kind of, she says, is a complementary modality of healing. It really, I think that there's something. I don't know how to put this, but there's practically something that changes in you when you do the sound therapy stuff that is very similar to the initiatory process, right? So as she does the different things, it's very much like going through an initiation or a magical rite for sure. But in terms of how much study, like she brings me all this stuff about the sound stuff, and because of that, I ended up reading a bunch of stuff in Agrippa, so we ended up feeding off of each other back and forth.
Yeah,
a lot.
That's what I saw your podcast on last week was about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was entirely because she's been studying the sound therapy stuff, But
right.
For me, most of my research, I think, is like I do a lot of academia EDU stuff. Like I go over I got sucked into the Greek stuff through the Greek magical papyri.
Oh yeah.
A couple of years ago, it got real popular, and then the Hecateon thing became a big deal and everything. So but I got sucked into that whole Greek Hellenic thing, all that. So.
Yeah. I mean, like aside from sound healing, like my goddess is Hecate. So
I have the earrings. I know you can't see them because these headphones, but like I have some jewelry right now that's about that. That's mine too. So that's definitely, I feel like that's that's my main go-to. And you've been following that. She's been your deity for how long? Like for a long time, right? Since childhood?
Yeah, for wow. I first started with her. Let me think about this for a minute. I think I was 20 when I first went to the Crossroads alone for my first offering. And she was really she wasn't in my life before then, but I didn't know her name. And I don't really want to go too far into that, but there were instances where I saw her as a kid through some pretty serious things, and I remember not being afraid, but she definitely looked very scary. However, like it was like I knew her almost.
Yeah.
That time was like, yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like her energy is definitely one that it definitely is part of the whole great work, right? It's that accepting, because everyone's scared of her, right? Like if people that don't know are like, oh, she's bad or she's dark, etc. But that's part of us, right? Like we have the darker stuff in us, and like we have to be able to accept that and work with it, right? You know, instead of just like hiding it away. And so I think that Hecate is a great example of like kind of the more unwielding, like kind of, I don't know, like wild parts of ourselves that is ferocious and fierce, and that we have to be able to like reclaim back, if that makes sense, you know? And because so many of us are just like, so, you know, like complacent or just suppressed in our own like kind of feminine energy, right? I have a problem with it. Like that's for me, my biggest challenge is the feminine stuff. I'm such a male energy dominated person because I just do like, I'm just the person that's had to take care of things myself forever. And the idea of being the opposite is terrifying. Like that's my big crux here. But I think that energy is very helpful to kind of come into that. Like you can go there with her, you know what I mean? And like kind of, does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like that accepting of that, what kind of badass version of ourselves. That's
so
okay.
There's within the practice of the yoginis, like the yoginis are often depicted as like really frightening, and they're a lot of times they're also like hypersexualized. The whole point of that is like they're drawing the tantric practitioner in with their sexuality, but they're a very frightening image. And the thing is, they're drawing you in through your karmas, like fear and sexuality, so that they can release you from your karmas, you know? Yeah. So it's like very much that kind of, the as above, so below, the beginnings and the end kind of thing. It's like you have to engage in those in that fear in order to release that fear, you know?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Gotta face your monsters.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's great. So you guys, that's always done, right? Like we're never done with it, or like the great
No,
work?
definitely not. I mean, like I was saying earlier, I think Venus was the first sphere I started working with when I first entered the occult, and I always go back to that sphere, and every single time it's like I feel like it's it's new work. Like I think at the very beginning it was mostly like artistic, like I was utilizing that sphere for my music and that kind of thing, and now the most recent time it was balancing my relationship with women, like this untangling all this internal, bullshit I harbored towards women because of my long history of relationships that were just completely unresolved, So it's really interesting because it's like, as much as I think I'm, I've been initiated into a sphere, whenever I go and I refocus my year around a certain sphere, I find myself, it's giving me something different, or it's targeting something different, or taking something different from me, That's
the sign of growth, right? Like, isn't that part, like, I think that would be a great marker of growth, because it's like when you read a book, and then you read it and you take what you get from it, but then life goes on. And then the next time you read it, you take something different because your experience now speaks like things that you didn't notice before are there. That's the same thing here. Like, it's like a cycle where we're just upping the ante each time, right? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
So I think so when you go through these initiations, it's cumulative and it spirals up, right? So it's like you go over the same kind of symbology or whatever, the symbols of your initiation. You can, after you go through it, you can look back and project onto it and be like, oh yeah, that's this. I did this the same as I did 10 years ago, only it was different then because it was 10 years before, and it cycles up like that, right? But as you go on, when you're losing things, like when I did my solar ritual, my life fell apart, and first marriage fell apart, whatever. Did it again later, second relationship after that fell apart, whatever. And it's like the solar stuff. But eventually you get to a point where you're not losing things anymore, because you've cut the part of yourself that brings it back,
right?
Off, right. So once you heal that, and you're not recreating that anymore,
Yep.
you do the solar initiation and it becomes something that is,
The lesson is learned.
yeah,
Wow.
and it's projecting. It's a light that goes out of you into the world, and not like a fire that cuts off part of you that's crippling you anymore. Right.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you do hit a point. You do hit there is a turning point in the work, right? Where it's not, where it goes from focusing on healing to transitioning to projecting. Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think,
To transformation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole process of moving from to, right. But so my focus changed from getting rid of all the things I was doing wrong to really enjoying my life and creating something better when, honestly, when Nicole and I got together, right? Because so I have mental illness issues, right? So I've had mental illness issues throughout my life, but the alcoholism that I was doing at the time was just to suppress the rapid cycling of my brain, and it developed into something that is crippling. And alcoholism runs in my family too. So I wonder how many of my other people have the same mental illness that I do. But it's once I quit drinking, my mind started working really fast, and I had to spend about a year and a half learning how to think again, right, and get my way through that, and that was when Nicole and I got together, and she helped me change my focus. The alchemical process puts you in an alembic where you're heated up until you're dissolved and everything is gone, right, and then you recoagulate, you reformulate around a new crystalline structure, right, and hopefully it's a pure one, right, it's clean. You finally got rid of all the crap. You got a clean crystal, seed crystal, right, when they do fake diamonds or fake sapphires, it creates the lattice based on what's already there, right? So you purify that, you get rid of everything, you put it in the alembic, and you dissolve it, and you reform it around what you have that's good and pure, right? And so when we got together, something happened where I realized that I was starting over my life again with magic, of course, and I was doing it knowing everything I knew before, right? And I knew I'd been through these 7 spheres initiations, and I was drinking anyway, right? And it's like, how could I be initiated in magic, done all this stuff with a great work, and still be an alcoholic destroying his life, And the answer is mental illness. It's not complicated, right? But the initiations did bring me to a point where I could stop doing that, right? Stop recreating. And I was powerfully creating the same cycles over and over again. The magic made me more of everything. It increased the volume on everything. I was more effective at creating terrible situations. If you look at the really powerful black magicians, I mean, they're really good at screwing up people's lives.
Yes,
100.
I am so familiar with that. I am so just that you. It's funny. So I think the first order that I was in was a chaos order, and it was not a chaos order because it was chaos magicians. It was a chaos order because we specifically created an egregore that's entire intention was to sow chaos. And
Sounds fun.
yeah, we were a bunch of amateurs in our first a bunch of amateurs, and everybody's lives fell apart. People ended up,
Success is your name.
Exactly. It was great. And I was like, there's something to this egregore thing.
That's what you took away.
Yeah.
So that's the great work. It's FAFO, right? It's F around and find out.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Right. It's asking you shall receive.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Jesus. That I think you gave me chills when you were saying that, because about how everything, you're losing the things that are bad for you, like all of those toxic cycles. And then so would you say that once that's done, you're being present, like your presence is here and now and not focused on the things from the past or the what ifs of the future, but more just being in the moment?
You have more of an option to choose that. You're more likely to choose that when you're clear-minded about things. You can always slip back into old patterns of behavior. You can always decide to be an asshole. You're free. You're free. You can be that jackass you were last year if you want to be. You don't have to be. You don't have to do good. But.
Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy of how the great work looks, because that's the thing is like, what does it look like, right? So what does it look like? When I was doing research for this, I asked that question. I was like, what does it look like? And so what I came up with was that it looks like people that are living their life purpose and like doing it like all the time, and giving back to others, like not being so selfish, like about, me, but like, how can I help others too, but not in a negative way, like, or like a doormat way, but just in a constructive way. And being happy, like having a good life. And I think that people like this rat race, right, of how we're programmed sucks. Like it's meant to keep us away from that. I think, like if you're wanting all the time for something and you're just working your ass off constantly and you're just going home and going to bed, and it's like a cycle, you never have time to like, have those like good things.
A lot of that's like the trap of the ego or whatever. So it's like, in order to discover your true self, your true authentic self, you have to be selfless, So it's like when you're living for yourself, when you're living for yourself, when you truly are living for yourself, you are living outside of yourself, right? You're just present at one. There's no delineation between that you and what's right there, right? But
it's hard.
But the thing is, like, you're constantly told like you need to live for yourself and that kind of stuff. And then there's like the inward ego self that you get trapped in. And that's the one that's like, I'm anxious, I'm scared, I'm sad. And that's the one that perpetuates that kind of cycle of just, that world of shit, that world of darkness, I guess,
Yeah. I mean, I think like this is like definitely I just have like a new way to frame this now. Like, and I thank you for that so much, Rufus, because I was trying so hard to put like into words, but that's it, I think. And then, but that we live our lives till we're not here anymore. Right. So it's going to be a constant, like you're not going to be done, because you're going to be hopefully at that point living everything in a good way and not having to shed the negatives anymore. It's just about upping or like increasing or enhancing the joy and like presence that you're able to now afford.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got the energy to create it, right?
That's actually a step we're taught in one of the key fundamentals of effective sound healing is exactly that. So being in the present and the present moment and just fully accepting what is of you, because when you're in the energy of acceptance, you have the resonance.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
So that's one of the things I've been probing through my research in the occult is if you pay attention in all the famous grimoires, there'll be one passage about some kind of acceptance, that you need to accept the will, and it completely gets glossed over in the magical training systems, right? They don't really point it out, and nobody really talks about it when you're going through ceremonial magic. Nobody really talks about it. They might hint at it, right? But you'll see, like in the Picatrix, you'll see in the Magus that there will be a tiny little paragraph that says like, you need to accept the will, and it's only through accepting the will that you can reflect the will and actually manifest, right? And Plotinus actually talks about this too in the Enneads. He talks about like, how do you create, like, if without that reflection, without that acceptance of the thought or whatever and reflecting upon it, there's no image, there's nothing that can be like manifest or whatever. And it's funny because it's a word that comes up when you talk to people about practice, but it's not something that you really find systematized within magic, right?
Yeah.
So what makes it more acceptable to me is that it's not separate. It's not
that's
somebody.
The point.
Yeah,
that's the point. Is the acceptance is the unity, and that is when we can transmute and transform. right?
Oh my gosh, you're so right. Like so are you saying that like when we are in that energy of like, okay, I mean, I hate to say that it is what it is, but like if we're in the acceptance of our situation, that our frequency actually changes, like because I know that happens with trauma. So like the one thing I do know about sound, and the one thing I know is that if you experience trauma early in life, it actually rewrites your DNA. It actually, the vibration, your resonant vibration changes to the point where your DNA is now rewritten. The code gets rewritten during the replication stage, and it mutates, right? And it causes problems.
Different genes activate to deal with a different environment.
Exactly.
As cells replicate, they different parts of your DNA get activated, other parts go away.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, is that what? So when we're in acceptance, like we're now on the higher, like, because that's a lower vibration that happens at, right? So like this one is at a higher one where more things can come to you.
It's in the heart. It's a heart energy. They say it's part of the heart.
Oh my God.
What the heart is like the gateway to the higher realms as well, right? So as well as the lower. So it's actually the connection point, right?
Yeah. So. That's crazy. That I did not know that. Wow, that's amazing. That's so crazy. Thank you for sharing that. That's just blew my mind. I'm actually kind of speechless right now because you said something that hit me like really hard right now. And it's like, it makes so much sense. You just like completely cleared up something for me. Thanks. Like I'll tell you later about it, but like dang. Yeah. I get it now. Wow.
Can I ask something about the acceptance? When you guys are talking about acceptance, do you mean like accepting, like just like in grief, you accept that that's just how it is? Like you said that it is what it is, right? Is that what you mean by accept?
For some things.
I don't think so. I think magical acceptance is almost a paradox, and it's a paradox that has to be felt and experienced because within the magical act, like when I am performing magic for, when I'm trying to get something, the reason that we do magic, right? I'm obviously within my will. I'm trying to impose my will on the world around me. However, in order for that magic to succeed, I have to be able to put myself, and I like that you brought up the heart, Nicole, because I have a really hard time explaining how that feeling is, but it's like an opening of within here, and it's letting in whatever comes, right? And sometimes you know how magic goes. She mocks me a lot because I'm very vague when I'm doing my spells but you have to just be able to let whatever comes come and push it out. That's what's happening.
Yeah. Like for me, I had a near-death experience in 2016, right? Like I was clinically dead at the hospital for 6 minutes after I bled out. Like I lost more than half of my blood. And I like that experience changed everything for me. And so when I'm saying accepting, it's like, I understand, I saw it firsthand, like what happens when we die. And it was crazy. It blew my mind, and it still does. And I'm still trying to work through it, like all of the things that happen in those 6 minutes, because it was not, time isn't real. That's all I can tell you right now. Time isn't real, and not like how we understand it here. And so 6 minutes was a lot longer for me, right? Like than the earthly time. And that experience is like, I understand now what we are. Like, I understand, I get it. And it's like, yeah, you have to just, because it's still, when you come back, it's still, the veil's still here, right? Like I came back, even with that information, I still have like, there's the physical aspect of the separation, but knowing I just have to go backwards. Yeah. It's like it's, almost impossible to kind of really, but to overlook. But at the same time, I still have that. So I'm so grateful for that experience, because I now know, like, oh, okay, so this is the will, the accepting is accepting what it's all us, like all of it's us, right? Like, so it's really hard to articulate into words, actually, what I'm trying to say. But yeah, like understanding that your will is the will.
Yeah, accepting the highest will. It's the acceptance of the highest will, which is your true will, which is the thing that you're reflecting out, right?
Not the one that I'm going to curse my neighbor because they looked at me the wrong way. Not that.
That's when stuff starts to get messy.
Yeah.
It might work briefly, but
so thank you guys. That was really elucidating, like completely. I think that I got it. Yeah, really great.
That was great.
So great. And yeah, like I'm speechless. Actually, thank you guys so much. You guys are awesome.
You guys should come to the sound bath sometime.
Yeah, I would love that. Like, sound stuff is so interesting to me. If you have any like cool articles you could share, please feel free. Like, I would love to read it. And that I have a repository of academic articles. So like so many. If you guys want, I'm happy to send. That's what I do.
If
I
you
study.
have anything on scalar energy, I'm researching.
Oh, I do.
that.
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. Yep. I can send you some stuff from. Yeah. Do you have a scribe? You guys definitely get a scribed subscription if you don't have it. If not, I send it to you. Everything's on there.
Yeah. She's a great resource to have. She gets me anything I ever want.
The ancient, modern.
The only thing I still can't get my hands on is the epistles of the Brethren of Purity. I can't get the entire thing. That's the only thing she hasn't been able to get me.
That's fine. It's not
I
translated.
know it's translated English.
Yeah.
But it's highly paywalled by academia. It costs like $120 just for like one piece of it.
I usually have anything. So if you guys I need anything ever, just feel free. I can send it over like pretty instant, like pretty fast. I'm pretty good at that. So, thank you guys so much. Like,
I would like to ask though, Nicole, do you have any plugs for your
what about
sound
your familiar?
healing?
Your familiar. What's that about?
Oh, my familiar.
Yeah.
Which one?
Oh, well, how many?
My pullet, the black pullet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I just felt drawn to get it.
What is it?
Basically, it's a talisman, but there's a spirit that's
right. Okay, that's what I thought.
Attached to it, and some even say that it's actually the devil himself. But it's been phenomenal. Like I ask it to do things, and it does. Like almost immediately. The first night that it arrived, I sat with it, and it just looks like this black thing, and it's attached or like it's wound up, and it's got little stuff in it, and it came with some oil and a conjuration, and But the guy I got it from is his name's Adam Conjurer, and he makes them, but you can also just make your own. I didn't know about the book until I bought the talisman. So you can actually make your own black pullet if you wanted to.
Oh, interesting. To check that out.
So it's the hen that lays the golden eggs, right?
Okay,
the first night that it arrived, before I did the conjuration, I just wanted to like kind of sit with it and just meditate with it, I guess. And so I sat with it for like 15 minutes, and it came in really strong, like almost immediately. As soon as I got into that like breathing pattern that puts you into a theta consciousness, basically alpha theta. It was like, yes, I am here, and I am real, and I am for you, and I will be yours. And to prove this, and before you do this conjuration, I will lay a golden egg of fortune almost immediately, and you will have it almost basically immediately. And I was like, okay, cool. So I just thanked it and closed out and gave it some incense. And the next morning, what did you get?
We got a $500 sale overnight.
Yeah, nice.
I made like $500 in sales like the previous month, because it's not really
nice.
And then overnight, like we got $500 sales, and then like I think a huge week. It was great.
It was a really good week. Like it was like just consecutive like big amounts of money that were coming in from the store, and I was like, holy crap, okay. So like the next day I did the conjuration, and gave it a really nice offering, and sent it on its way with more tasks, and It's it helps my cat lose weight at night.
She has a chicken chasing her cat.
No, it's
I have
not
concerns.
He's chasing the pullet.
He's chasing the pullet. Oh, he's chasing the pullet.
Yes.
I thought you had the chicken chasing the cat.
No.
I know.
It's supposed to appear at the corner of his eye and make him think there's a mouse, basically.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and your cat's been losing weight, and you're making money like that. That's a win-win. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So getting back to the how markers for the great work, or how to keep if things get mundane, things like
Just
this.
get a black pullet, man.
Yeah, honestly, that's one of the best things about, in my opinion, living with Nicole is that she's a Sag. So if things don't get boring, if things get boring, she goes out and finds something interesting and brings it home, and we have something new and exciting to play with, But so
that's cool. That's awesome. That I know. I was like, what is it? Okay, that's what I thought it was. I knew the book. I was like, I'm confused. But okay, it totally makes sense now. That's awesome. What about
get the book? But yeah, that's something we need to order.
I can send it to you. I have that on PDF if you want. I'm not kidding. I know a guy. It's me. So yes, absolutely. I can send it to you. No problem. But what else do you guys have? It's the store. What about the store?
RufusOpus.com is where that is. That's all we got right now for that. My website, the YouTube channel is like my favorite new thing because I just got monetized.
Oh,
congratulations.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I got memberships a few months ago, and then I finally got enough hours in. The last few hours are just excruciating because it goes you lose the 365 days ago, you lose those hours every time you're accumulating. So I was so close, and then I had a 500-hour show that fell off. So I lost 500 hours. I was like, oh, so it gets frustrating. But yeah. So the YouTube channel is Ropocalypse. No, it's Rufus Opus. It's just Rufus Opus. At Rufus Opus, I think. Oh, is it Ropocalypse?
I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is.
We'll add it in.
Thank you. I'll send you a link. And yeah. But that's the most fun thing to do is the podcast for sure. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for having us on. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, thank you guys for joining. For anybody that's listening who's out there, the book we were talking about tonight was Seven Spheres by Rufus Opus. It details his method of initiating into the 7 planetary spheres using a method of conjuration called drawing spirits into crystals that he is kind of known for popularizing at the moment.
Yeah. Most authority, the first. So
if anybody wants to check that out, as I guess moving forward in the great work of the magus, of the magician, of the wizard, of the witch, you get to a certain point in your path where magic starts being about the transformations you receive and not the little checks. Those are fun too. So
definitely. Yes. So, all right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. You've been listening to Discourse, where we venture into the mysteries of esotericism, the occult, and the depths of spiritual exploration. I am Abammon the Great, joined as always by Dr. Anna Stone, bringing the insights of both practitioner and scholar to guide your journey. Remember, the path of wisdom is illuminated by both knowledge and experience, and each step brings new discoveries. Until next time, continue your exploration and stay attuned to the unseen.